What if the deadliest part of a hurricane had nothing to do with the storm itself? What if the real killer was hiding long before the clouds arrived? What if the people of New Orleans were not destroyed by nature, but by something far more unforgivable? Keep watching, because by the end of this video, you will know the answer, and it will change the way you see everything that happened here. New Orleans, Louisiana, one of the most unique cities in the entire United States. A city of jazz and culture, and food and history. A city built below sea level, surrounded by water on nearly every side. Lake Pontchartrain to the north, the Mississippi River curving through its heart, the Gulf of Mexico just beyond the horizon. For generations, the people of New Orleans lived in this bowl of land, protected by a network of levees and flood walls, built and maintained by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. They trusted those walls. They had no reason not to. Then Hurricane Katrina arrived. Hurricane Katrina formed in the Atlantic Ocean on August 23, 2005. It moved west across Florida as a moderate storm. Then it entered the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and everything changed. Within 24 hours of entering the Gulf, Katrina exploded into a Category 5 monster. With winds of 280 kilometers per hour, the National Hurricane Center issued its warning. Meteorologists called it catastrophic. Scientists called it unsurvivable for anyone in its direct path. The mayor of New Orleans ordered a mandatory evacuation. For the first time in the city's history, over 1 million people fled. But not everyone could leave. The elderly, the sick, the poor, people with no cars, people with nowhere to go. An estimated 100,000 people stayed behind. They would live through something that no warning could have truly prepared them for. Katrina made landfall near Grand Isle, Louisiana, on the morning of August 29, 2005. As a Category 3 storm with winds of 200 kilometers per hour. The city shook, windows shattered, roofs peeled away. But then federal officials breathed a sigh of relief. New Orleans had not taken a direct hit from the strongest winds. One official famously said the city had dodged the bullet. He was wrong, because the bullet had not been the wind at all. Within hours of Katrina passing, the levees began to fail. Not because the storm was too powerful, because the levees were never strong enough to begin with. The 17th Street Canal levee collapsed. The London Avenue Canal levee failed. The industrial canal walls gave way, one after another. The flood walls that were supposed to protect New Orleans simply fell apart. Lake Pontchartrain poured into the city. 80% of New Orleans went underwater. Some neighborhoods under 6 meters of water. And here is what makes the blood run cold. Engineers and government reports confirmed afterward that these levees had been poorly designed and poorly maintained for years. The Army Corps of Engineers acknowledged the failures were due to engineering flaws. The walls had not been built to the standard they were supposed to meet. This had been known. Warnings had been issued. Funding requests to repair and strengthen the levees had been denied. In 2001, a published report predicted almost exactly what would happen if a major hurricane hit New Orleans. It predicted the flooding, the deaths, the catastrophe. Nobody acted on it. 25,000 people had taken shelter inside the Louisiana Superdome, believing they would be safe. When the roof partially tore open in the storm, those 25,000 people sat in sweltering heat, with no power, no clean water, no working bathrooms. 4 days. The federal government knew they were there. Help did not come fast enough. Bodies floated in floodwater. People were stranded on rooftops for days waving at helicopters. Hospitals ran out of medicine and power. The most powerful country on earth left its own citizens in a flooded city. 4 days. 1,833 people died. Not from the wind, not from the rain, from the failures that came before the storm, and the failures that came after it. To understand what happened in New Orleans, you have to understand where the city sits. Most of New Orleans lies below sea level, some parts nearly 2 meters below. The city exists only because of its levee system. Without those walls, New Orleans would flood in a heavy rainstorm, let alone a hurricane. For decades, scientists and engineers warned that the levee system was not strong enough to withstand a major hurricane. The levees had been designed for a Category 3 storm. Katrina arrived as a Category 3, and they still failed because the engineering was flawed, because maintenance had been neglected, because the money to fix them had been redirected elsewhere. Katrina did not drown New Orleans. The decisions made years before Katrina drowned New Orleans. The storm was the trigger. The disaster was man-made. The federal response made everything worse. FEMA Director Michael Brown later admitted the agency was unprepared. Critical supplies sat at distribution centers while survivors waited. Rescue operations that should have begun within hours took days to organize. Meanwhile, the whole world watched on television as American citizens waited on rooftops, in a flooded American city, for help that was taking too long to arrive. It was a failure of government at every level, local, state, federal, and it exposed something deeply uncomfortable about which communities receive protection and which communities are left behind. But New Orleans did not disappear. In the weeks after Katrina, ordinary people did extraordinary things. Boat owners from across Louisiana launched what became known as the Cajun Navy, sailing through flooded streets to pull survivors from rooftops. Volunteers from across the country flooded into the city to gut houses, rebuild homes, and help strangers they had never met. Community organizations rebuilt neighborhood by neighborhood. Schools reopened. Restaurants reopened. The music returned. New Orleans today stands rebuilt. A new and stronger levee system protects the city. New flood walls, new pumping stations, new early warning systems. The population came back. The culture came back. The jazz came back. And now you know the answer to the question we asked at the very beginning. The deadliest part of Hurricane Katrina was not the storm. It was the broken walls that were never fixed. It was the warnings that were never acted on. It was the slow response that came too late. 1,833 people paid for those failures. With their lives, New Orleans remembers every single one of them. And the lesson Katrina left behind is not just about hurricanes. It is about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect a city choose not to. Hurricane Katrina, August 29, 2005. 1,833 lives lost. 80% of New Orleans underwater. The storm did not destroy the city. Broken promises did. Subscribe for more untold disaster stories.